Don't mess with me, pork chop. What day is this?
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
You know, I thought it was yesterday.
Oh.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and these videos, these topics just keep coming up, and then they came for Geoff Johns, and this is kind of a weird story. I guess there were some allegations from Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in the Justice League movie, about unprofessional behavior by Joss Whedon, the director that replaced Zack Snyder on the film, that said he kind of Geoff Johns kind of enabled him in that. And so some other accusations have come out after that. And here to talk about this with me is my good friend Perch from Comics by Perch. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So it's been pretty interesting how this escalated so fast. And like I said, the initial allegation was that Geoff Johns, and I believe it's a big-time producer at Warner Brothers, enabled Joss Whedon's behavior on set of unprofessionalism. First of all, I find that one hard to believe. You know, obviously Joss Whedon, you know, he directed Avengers, which was one of the biggest, most successful superhero movies of all times. Geoff Johns, you know, in Hollywood still hasn't had a really big hit. You know, I imagine he was a producer and was helping consult with that project, but I don't believe he had any kind of power like that to where he could step in and be actually be like the governor over Joss Whedon.
No, probably not. I think that, you know, this accusation and kind of the pieces to it, at least from Ray's perspective, it feels like they complained to the producers, which is common. If you're unhappy with something on set, other cast members, the director, whatever it happens to be, you can send your complaints up to the producer or to the people who are, quote unquote, in charge or acting in that capacity. And it sounds like complaints were made and they weren't acted upon. But that isn't particularly an unusual situation, especially when you have a more high-profile director like Joss Whedon. It's questionable what anybody could do, barring big criminal behavior. But if Joss Whedon is being a jerk or yelling at somebody or showing up late, you can complain, but it's unlikely that you're going to get a lot of traction at that level. And I don't think Geoff Johns has the stroke or the ability to really kind of, quote unquote, rein Joss Whedon in. You know, maybe John Berg does, maybe a bit, but even then, you know, when you bring in a high-profile name director, you kind of get what you get. It's famous stories about directors. I mean, David Lynch would show up to sets without pants, and it's like that was his style, and people dealt with it. You know, is it weird? Sure, but being able to go and complain about it and get it stopped is certainly not within Johns' power.
Certainly seemed that way to me. So, inspired by that, there was a person, I guess they ran a Man of Steel fan site, had some connections, I guess, at Warner Brothers, and they came out with some other accusations at Geoff Johns because they were inspired by Ray Fisher. Now, how this inspired that, I have no idea, because they don't feel the least bit related. And here, I'm actually going to read the text of what the allegation is, and then we'll discuss it. This is what the person said. And I'm not going to identify him because, like I said, they're not a professional in the industry. This is someone running a fan site. A while back, I ran a popular fan site for Man of Steel, and it was how I became acquainted with Geoff. A trailer didn't have the correct viewing audience. No one outside of the UK could view it. I let him know, and he was able to have someone correct it. It was a weekend, and my Warner Brothers contacts were not around. From that point, Geoff became flirtatious with me. It was weird and uncomfortable, but I pretended to be obtuse to it because I really didn't know how to handle it. I felt I needed to accept the treatment and let it slide. I didn't want someone in the upper ranks to cause any issues for me or the fans. I was afraid of saying anything to Warner Brothers. I chose at some point to unfollow him, but decided I would remain a friendly person. I didn't want problems. I think I told 3 people about it. Outside of them, I thought, who would believe me? Would I just be called some silly fangirl and dismissed? As time moved forward, I kept friendly terms with Geoff. He sent some comics to a little girl I sponsored, which I didn't expect. He was a normal kind. I still felt the discomfort of what occurred, but didn't think it was smart to say anything. Still, I chose to stuff the discomfort down inside me and live with it. And then she continued. After he left DC, I didn't communicate too much with him. When we did communicate, it was about fandom things or general, hey, how are you? Nothing of consequences. Reading Ray's post struck at the discomfort with Geoff, which still has residence inside my heart. I accepted an apology I never received and took on the responsibility to make it all okay when it wasn't okay and still isn't. I've seen other women come forward inspired by Ray's post. It's ringing true to me. It shows that just because time passes and I am okay doesn't mean the behavior was okay.
Yeah.
I'm baffled here. She doesn't work for the company. She certainly is not employed. These two are not professionally related to each other. He never made really a pass at her. I guess he was flirtatious during their conversation. I imagine that was on the phone, but maybe it could have been via email or text, or maybe even a video call. And then nothing. The person chose to remain on friendly terms, and he didn't do anything. He even went out of his way to send comic books to a little girl that she sponsored without her knowledge, and never asked for anything after that. Like he didn't do that to gain favor or anything. He just did that to be a nice person.
Yeah, I think, so on the surface of those comments, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And this is kind of the problem of where we are in right now, is these accusations are coming forth. Some may have merit, some may not. We don't have a lot of designation between the two, and everything's getting very blurred together. I think if we were sitting here and we were looking at different scenarios where Geoff Johns, by flirtatious, does that mean he was nice? Does that mean he said, "Oh, you sound very pleasant"? Does that mean he said, "Hey, I'd really like to come over to your house and rip your clothes off"? What are we talking about? What level of flirtatious does this mean? We've seen some screenshots from texts and other things around all this, not with Geoff Johns, but with other creators, where you see some that are very innocuous, very innocent, maybe awkwardly worded, but certainly nothing that if you said in a room in front of a bunch of other people, you would get gasps or any concern. You could say in front of an HR group and nobody would really blink an eye. And then you've seen other stuff that it's like, making very crude jokes or asking somebody to go down on you or whatever it happens to be, that's much worse. And unfortunately, we're looking at all these things and we're going, well, we don't exactly know how bad it is from what's being said. So I guess we all just have to kind of assume it's good or bad or who knows. But that story was accounted on the surface would not get traction within any company at an HR department, just as stated, unfortunately, unless there was more to it.
Maybe I'm dense here. Where's the relationship where she was inspired by Ray Fisher? These allegations, these stories don't seem to correlate to each other at all.
No, I think it's just a name.
Was it just an opportunity to come up and air some grievances?
Yeah, I think mostly that. I think the name was said, and unfortunately, everything is by association now. So his name was mentioned in this tweet as being somebody who didn't help, that should have helped. Ray Fisher's issue seems to be a lot more. Nothing in his tweet indicated any kind of sexual criminality or anything along those lines. It was all just like, these guys are jerks, including Joss Whedon. The word abusive, unfortunately, is being used a lot of different places, but it's like, this guy's a jerk. That's pretty much all it came down to. So Johns, again, there's nothing that's really connecting here. And then after, what the post you read, there's been other little things like, oh yeah, he's a jerk. That's always how it happens. Somebody says something and then a bunch of other people pile on and go, oh yeah, I've seen that. They chime in. But again, there's no specifics. It's all just like, oh yeah, he once hit on somebody at a conference I was at. It's like, okay, but hit on them like, hey, we should have dinner sometime, or hit on them like, hey, if you want a job, then you're going to need to have sex with me. There's a big difference between the two. And if it's the second one, then we need to encourage people to speak up and say it and show it. But these vague, they kind of made me uncomfortable. I got a fluttery feeling in my stomach when he came over because I knew he was in a position of power, and so I was on my best behavior. That's not harassment. That's work. And if we're going to start to say that the line for this stuff sits with somebody in power, makes somebody else feel like they have to conform or be a certain way, that's going to hit every single industry, almost every person. That's kind of the nature between management and employees. It sets up a dynamic, and that's part of what HR does. Is it helps to train people not to abuse that dynamic. A lot of these things, I'm not seeing the abuse. I'm just seeing a lot of kind of vague. I had to act a certain way because I knew this person had some power. Unfortunately, that part is life.
Like I said, I don't understand the validity or even what this accusation is trying to get at, other than it seems like, he was a little bit flirtatious at one point, and he was just a stand-up nice guy overall, when they were interacting. What is Geoff Johns supposed to do with this? Can he, should he even come out and speak about it? It's such a nothing burger. He would, does he even want to give it, airtime or even a bigger spotlight? Because there's literally nothing there.
No, I wouldn't if I was him. I think that the most likely way this is going to be handled is somebody within the Warner Brothers HR department is going to give him a call. They're going to ask for his view of the story, and they'll take notes, and that'll probably be the end of it. Some of these big corporations are likely to start to create some training programs on how to handle these things, and they probably need to. When I say training programs, I don't mean all the men have to go into a room and be taught how to be better. I mean that people are going to have to go into a room and say, look, while you're out there,
these are our policies. This is how you. This is suggestions.
Exactly. These are our suggestions. And by the way, if you're in a management position right now in any company for any industry, you have to be a little bit more careful now. Being nice to some. If you're at a job fair, somebody comes up to you and wants a job, and you say, hey, thanks, you got a good resume. You have to be careful with any compliment, because any compliment can be taken as flirting. And if it's taken as flirting, then you're abusing your power, and then you're going to be written up on Twitter.
Yeah, it's just it seems never ending. And the worst part about this is there are some really legitimate accusations out there that are pretty vile and really need to be looked at and talked about. But it feels like they're being drowned out in a signal to noise of people just jumping on and dogpiling just because they want to be a part of the grievances when their issues don't fit in with that story. That you're just making the actual accusations go down, because Geoff Johns is a high profile creator. Sean Gordon Murphy is a high profile creator. When you start throwing their names out there, those people are obviously going to get more airtime. They're going to draw more eyes on them. People are going to look at those accusations and be like, what is going on here? There's nothing here to see. And then the stuff that really needs to be talked about and addressed is just going to go by the wayside.
I completely agree. And I think there are some definite problems in the industry. There's some definite people who abuse their powers. There's people who've done criminal assault in this industry who for many years, Scott at Dark Horse, others who did absolutely wrong things that we know that there are records of, and they stayed in their jobs for almost 2 decades. And this is just going to enable more of that. It's going to diminish the real problems in favor of this person was nice to me kind of comments. That's not helpful. And I hope that we can kind of come back from that, but you hit upon it. Geoff Johns is a big name. Sean Gordon Murphy's a big name. Big names draw more attention. And that's why that's why people are coming out and with the vaguest kind of accusations, they're making these comments, because it's a big name. They know they're going to get attention, and they're going to get some clapbacks on it, and it's going to help them. And unfortunately, it's a very cynical thing. It's in the saddest way, this entire cycle is cynical. If in the comic industry at cons, it was not uncommon for independent creators to go and flirt with editors and others as a way to kind of give them a leg up in getting a job. That's been a common bit of advice that a lot of indie comic creators were given is, put on your nicest outfit, maybe dress a little sexy, and you can get a job.
Buy him a drink.
Yeah, buy him a drink. See if you can help. And some people took advantage of that. It was wrong that they took advantage of it, but it was also wrong that you put yourself out there as bait to get a job. That was also wrong. Both these things are not good. The end result of all this, in the weirdest way, one result could be that comic companies start looking more at merit than some of these approaches. So that may be the silver lining in all this, that a lot of the networking and the kind of the way people have gotten jobs in the comic industry will go away in favor of a very robotic, by merit only approach. I hope so. That's the optimistic view of what could come out of this. But this isn't helpful to actual victims. It's not helpful to the industry.
I'm going to go with the pessimistic view. If I'm a big name creator out there and someone calls me up and says, hey, I'm so-and-so from a fan site and I would like a quote about this, I would say, I don't have time for that. I do not help out fan sites. If I were at a Comic-Con and someone came up and say, hey, can you look at my portfolio? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Can you give me some advice on what to do in the industry, how to break in? no, you're going to have to go through the company. I'm not here for advice. I do not want to give you any professional advice because I don't want to put myself in jeopardy of being smeared on social media through accusations that have no merit.
That's absolutely what's going to happen. And it's happening already. I guarantee you within DC and Marvel or both that right now, a lot of creators, high profile ones, are being told when people approach you, route them back to the company, put them through official channels. If they want something for their fan site, an interview, an autograph, advice, send them to HR, and then we'll deal with it internally with our own people. I can guarantee you that's already being said at the big two, and you're going to see more of that. So all this is going to shut down an avenue that comics had. And I don't think it's going to actually solve the problem. Unfortunately, the really big serial abusers in this thing, they're going to find other ways. This isn't going to affect them. What it is going to affect is what's been a nice process of people being able to have some access to the community. That's going to go away.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to blame them. That's exactly what I would be doing. It's time to button down the hatches and start closing off some of these avenues that you use to communicate with people. Because I guarantee you, out of 1,000 interactions that a Geoff Johns or a Sean Gordon Murphy have with aspiring creators or people that have fan sites or just fans that want to talk to them about the industry and things like that, an overwhelming majority, over 99%, are just real, true interactions. But just that opening yourself up to that 1 in 1,000 or 3 in 1,000 opportunity to be taken advantage of, have your name smeared in social media with the way that people dogpile on people right now, especially if you have a little bit of fame, just isn't worth the chance.
No, and companies are going to decide no, creators are going to decide no. And again, with Geoff Johns, we don't know. There may be something else in there. Who knows? Maybe something comes out. If there is something else out there, I'd love for somebody to bring it with some tangible material. It's kind of let's listen. Yes, we're here to listen to victims. Let's hear what has to be said, but we need something tangible. As long as it's on this very kind of vague, he was nice to me, it made me uncomfortable, that you can't action that. And it's just going to erode parts of the industry.
So, Perch, I guess that's about all I have to say on the subject. Is there anything else that you need to get off your chest about this? Because it's becoming frustrating, if you haven't noticed.
No, it's very frustrating. And I've been covering some of this, and you notice with every video I do covering it, there's a sense of exhaustion of what goes on. And it is this blurring of, what are we talking about here? Is it somebody made you uncomfortable? Is it something criminal happened? Is it somebody really took, basically shared their power in favor for sexual favors? Is that what we're talking about? Is it somebody who was a jerk? The whole Joss Whedon situation, still unclear to me. Was he just a jerk on set? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, and there's the Christopher Nolan accusations that he won't let people sit in chairs.
Sure. And maybe it's
weird.
Crappy, and people shouldn't work with Christopher Nolan if they want to sit in chairs. I mean, we need to start dealing with these things with a little bit more specifics rather than just, I don't like this person, because the I don't like this person train goes on forever, and that nothing gets solved.
All right, Perch, I really appreciate your insight and the conversation, but glad to say we're basically on the same wavelength.
We're absolutely on the same page. This is frustrating, and it's exhausting, and it's getting us nowhere.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.